My name is Jason Lightfoot. I'm a Senior Portfolio Manager at Futuregrowth Asset Management, managing our flagship infrastructure residential bond fund.
Hi, and I'm Olga and I'm Head of Credit here at Futuregrowth Asset Management. So this is the first of a series of conversations that we would like to have around infrastructure and investment. We have written and spoken at length for many years on this topic, and we thought it would be a good time now to share some of our emerging insights in this space. We want to talk about some of the challenges that are in this area, as well as some of the opportunities. And the topic we're going to tackle today is really just to sketch out the landscape and what it looks like right now. And in future series, we'll talk about how we solve for the challenges and the opportunities. But maybe, Jace, you can kick us off with what is the lay of the land right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a topic that's very close to our hearts. We obviously see the benefit that it has for pension funds. We'll talk more about that later. But also the fact that it has a good influence or a bearing on economic growth for the country. So one of the measures that we look at from an economic perspective is gross fixed capital formation, and we use that as a percentage of GDP. So what that refers to is how much is actually being spent on real capital assets, for example. So things like investments in toll roads, power, utilities, ports and harbours. South Africa really has been on a downward trajectory where it's been fairly low compared to its other emerging economy peers. But if you look at the long-term picture, over the last 60 years or so, we've probably been close to about 15% or so as a percentage of GDP. If you compare that to China as one of the economies that are at the forefront in that perspective, they'd be close to about 35%. That has direct bearing on economic growth. Where if you look at our long-term economic growth number, we're close to about 2.5%. Compared to China, which is closer to about 8.5%. So you definitely see the importance of investing in infrastructure and what it has, the bearing that it has on economic growth in the long term.
Certainly, and economic growth is something we all need in this country. And I think what Jace has also outlined is that the sectors in which this investment is needed is very much in the energy and the logistics space. And that is something that we are all, as citizens of South Africa, are feeling very deeply. The two entities that are responsible for delivering on some of those investment needs are Eskom and Transnet. And unfortunately, they themselves are not in a state where they can take on additional borrowings to make these investments themselves. The state as well has got, our GDP numbers are very high, and so there's a limited capacity for the state to take on further borrowings to do these investments themselves. And so the conversation of late has turned very much to enlisting the private sector and how the private sector can help the state in making these investments in these core areas, particularly of energy and logistics. And so it's very evident that there are investment opportunities there, but that the private sector is being enlisted to help. And I think the next question we want to really answer is to say, well, can we help? What is the capacity for the private sector to be able to make these investments?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the expected capital expenditure or funding requirement rather in the space is expected to be north of about 1.9 trillion rand over the next 10 to 15 years. So sure, it's made up a whole mix of different sectors, but as we alluded to earlier, energy and obviously transport are the key sectors that do require funding as a sort of immediate stance. If you look at energy, for example, that's about 1.4 trillion rand that's required. That's based on the Integrated Resource Plan 2019. Sure, it doesn't need to be updated, but it is expected to be in that sort of realm. And again, alluding to the fact that the capital markets and the bank institutions and the retirement fund industry, they do need to play a role because government ultimately can't. Their balance sheet is in a pure state, given the fact that state GDP is close to about 75% right now and expected to grow to close to about probably 92%. Given the fact that they also still continue to provide guarantees for various SOEs who can't fund off their own balance sheets. So it really is a sad state of affairs. Retirement fund industry as a whole are keen to play a role here, but ultimately these deals and opportunities need to be bankable, and we'll talk more about that later in our next instance of the series. It's really around creating an environment to allow pension fund industry to invest in these opportunities, given the fact that these assets are ultimately attuned to their long-term liabilities.
Yeah, so we've established there's a huge need for investment There's big capacity, certainly in the retirement fund industry, to make these investments. And I think really the next conversation that we would like to have is just to talk about how do we unlock some of these opportunities and make them happen? What do we need to see in terms of frameworks in order to make these investments, these much needed investments, happen? So we'll have that conversation next time.
Great, thank you.